to be followed by Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The motion before us today is asking Parliament to endorse the point that deliberation should be at the heart of our decision-making. And I feel that now more than ever we need our politics to be the product of fair and rational debate. And I'm not for a minute suggesting that we strip out passion from our politics, as we always need to show that we care. But I think that in these troubled times, we very much need to bring back into vogue clear, calm heads and good old-fashioned common sense. And in that regard, I do believe citizens' assemblies have a contribution to make in helping to change some aspects of our political culture and discourse. I'm a big fan of the author Zadie Smith, and she counsels us that for progress to survive, it needs to be looked after and reimagined. And the events of the past few weeks show that we just can't take our democracy for granted. And while I have never, as a lifelong nationalist, wanted to be ruled from Westminster, I've always felt somewhat disengaged from it. I do nonetheless have every right as a citizen to be absolutely outraged that the so-called Mother of Parliaments is being prorogued, the longest suspension in recent history, and to hear ministers of Her Majesty's Government speculate on the TV about how they might find ways around legislation. And I'm sure that I'm not alone in that within this chamber across the political divide. And the reality is we are in a big national crisis across the UK. And the other reality is that at the end of the day, no one knows what will happen next, although we all like to speculate. So I do think it is important that here in Scotland, in our Parliament, that we meet to discuss how we strengthen our democracy. And while we shouldn't view citizens' assemblies in isolation, it's not a silver bullet. When you get to my age, you realise that nothing ever is. But it is potentially one part of a broader system of civic participation that could underpin a well-developed and functioning democracy. And whether at home or abroad, we see other factors that may challenge or may change our democracy as we know it. Globalisation, the rise of populism, the increase of corporate power, technological changes, social media as a news outlet and a campaign tool, the climate emergency, and poverty and inequality, a range of emergencies that won't necessarily be able to be tackled in isolation from each other, but all of which can lead to disengagement and distrust. So to protect our democracy, we need to constantly seek better ways to reach out and engage. And this is important because parliaments are really truly representative of the people they seek to serve. With the prominence of so many Toryans at Westminster, to me it increasingly looks and sounds like a period drama from the 1950s. But neither are we in this Parliament truly representative of the diversity of Scotland, and there are many folk from our different communities that are just simply missing. And this, of course, needs to be addressed, preferably within the 21st century, but it does underline the point that we need other forums out with the parliamentary bubble to inform our work and our decision-making. And the question being posed to the Citizens' Assembly is entirely open. What kind of country are we seeking to build, and how do we overcome the challenges we face? And we all need to be committed to really listen, think and then respond. And in that regard, I do think the Government has outlined in the motion its respect of this Parliament. And I think it is important not to miss the potential or the spirit of a citizens' assembly in that you can neither prejudice the outcome or pre-write your response to it. If you set up an independent assembly, you can't control it. And I think David Martin has certainly demonstrated his independence. We know that in a democracy, people are entitled to change their minds. They're also entitled to stick to their guns. The reality is that the question of Scotland's constitutional future has not evaporated. We can, of course, debate why that is and what we should or should not do about it. There will be a range of views. But whatever your position on Scotland's constitutional future, surely we can all agree that whatever happens, we will need to find a path to travel on together on a range of issues. Presiding Officer, if I can end with one of Sadie Smith's clarion calls of calling on us all